If you're in Utah and want to start a podcast or create content to grow your brand, check out Utah Podcast Studio. We felt like everything was being guided by God. Like we felt like our meeting was being guided by God, our becoming friends.
It was nerve-wracking thinking that, man, like I'm going to come out of the hospital, single dad, and am I going to be like dating? Like, how's that going to go? And
When we first saw Chappie, my ex-husband, he was bleeding from like every hole in his head. I remember going into my bedroom and opening the closet door and seeing my husband's clothes there and just collapsed on the bed.
Yeah,
Just
it was tough.
thinking that he was never going to come home, and just, it was hard. Dad got a phone call. Remember that phone call?
Yeah, he just said that the bishop was coming over to marry you. It was like
It was almost midnight.
midnight. Yeah, it was
Or just after midnight.
I remember
Let's see what
even
you
at the
can
Tough
do.
Mudder, like I didn't want to miss any of the events. Like that was really pressing me mentally. And then one of them was this high dive thing where you're supposed to jump out and try to grab this swinging bar and like swing out into the water. Well, I already didn't do heights. I already didn't do water.
Which again, I didn't know about.
Andrea found me at the backside of this thing. Like,
I think when you go through hard things, like you learn so much, and you learn to not care what people think and just care about the individual person and making sure that people are okay, because you've been in a spot where you're not okay a lot of times. It's very apparent in hindsight that we needed to come together for a bigger purpose.
So if I ever lose my mind, I'll be fine, 'cause you're my silver lining. And if my world comes crashing down, I'll be fine, 'cause you're my silver lining.
All right, I just want to introduce my parents. They're guests here today. So Dan's in-laws and my parents, my dad, Jeff, and my stepmom, Jodi. And today we're going to talk about a lot of deep conversations, stuff that we've actually, most of which probably never talked about in person. So it should be super, super interesting and maybe a little bit emotional today. So we want to talk about like what their perspective was when I told them that I was going to marry somebody who was paralyzed. And again, this is something we've never really talked about, but I think it's going to be interesting to hear. We know that it's not all positive. So what I wanted to start with, though, is kind of the situation that my life was in leading up to meeting Dan. So my ex-husband, who was my husband at the time, was in a motorcycle accident, a bullet bike accident. He was in a coma for a month and a half and was left with a severe traumatic brain injury that left him like a child. And my dad was there at my house when that happened, the morning that I got that phone call. So I kind of want to start it out by having you, Dad, kind of explain what that was like for you that morning.
Okay. Well, I was just laying in bed at probably 6 o'clock, 6:15, somewhere around there, and sound asleep, and Andrea opened the door and told me we got to go because Chappie had been in a motorcycle accident. So we...
You forgot to mention the part where I was like in my bra. Like I was...
Well, I wasn't going to say that.
Discombobulated. I was so discombobulated.
Yeah,
like
you
went into there and like frantic.
you
And, like hadn't even put my shirt on yet, which is not. If you know me, you know that I'm an extremely modest person that would never in a million years do that. So that tells you how frazzled my brain was.
Yeah, she was. Promise me. I believe me. She was in her bra. But and so. We hurried and got our stuff together and hustled to the hospital. And Uriah was with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Uriah, and he was 17 months old.
Yeah. And so we went down there, and there he was, laying in the bed, head not looking good. And shortly after we got there, his parents got there. And it was just a real traumatic thing to go up there to the hospital every day and to see him like that and just laying there, no movement, and it was just traumatic.
Yeah, when we got to the hospital, he, like when we first saw Chappie, my ex-husband, he was bleeding from like every hole in his head. He had blood dripping out of his ears, his nose, his eye sockets, and his head was just like, it was all broken up. His skull was broken in like 3 different places, and so he was just, yeah, and he was completely knocked out cold. And I remember standing outside of his hospital room, and it was like his parents were on one side, the doctor was in the middle, then it was me, my dad, and I was holding our baby Uriah. And I remember just being so thankful that my dad was there, because when the doctor told me, like, your husband's probably not going to make it, like, my dad was there, and I was able to lean into him and lay on his chest and just get some kind of comfort that I definitely wouldn't have had if he wasn't there.
Yeah, and you always hear or see in the movies and see things like this, and and about when do you pull the plug, and are they gonna, if they're gonna make it, and do you pull the plug, and it's like they never said anything about anything like that, and they,
Yeah.
the doctors did indicate that he probably wasn't gonna pull through, but.
Yeah, they
But,
said he's
yeah.
either not going to make it, and if he does, he'll probably end up in a vegetable state his entire life or whatever, which was extremely hard news to hear when I was holding my 17-month-old baby.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always felt like that was definitely a God thing that my dad was there in that moment, because first of all, I wouldn't have even been able to drive myself to the hospital because I was so discombobulated.
And the night before that happened, I remember we was at your house, and Chappie was out there with Uriah in a little electric car, and helping him go around, and just he was really he really loved Uriah, and I have pictures and videos of that, and every once in a while I'll pop up and watching it. It's just real cool to see how he cared for him and how he was such a good dad before that happened, and now he doesn't even know it's his son.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah. He was an incredible dad.
he thinks it's his brother's son.
Yeah. And yeah, since that day, he's never called him or done, he just doesn't have the mental capacity to even think that he exists. So yeah. So my dad was there, and he stayed at my house with me for how long were you there before you had to go back?
A few weeks.
I was probably there a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it was
and,
several weeks. And sorry. So he was there driving me back and forth to the hospital, and just there to help with the kids and just be that support that I needed. I remember the first time that we went home from the hospital, and I remember going into my bedroom and opening the closet door to get clothes out and seeing my husband's clothes there. And do you remember I just collapsed on the bed,
Yeah, it was
just
tough.
thinking that he was never going to come home, and just, yeah, it was hard. And I can't imagine having gone through that by myself without my dad there to support me. But yeah, so for weeks and then months after that from afar, and then you came back and forth, but you saw me going through that. Like, it was obviously, one of the hardest things you can watch your kid go through is losing their spouse in that kind of a way. Especially when you have young grandkids. I also had a 6-year-old son. And so, yeah, so Dan and I met through the hospital system. Dan's accident was the day after Chappie's accident. And so we met through the hospital system, and yeah. What was that like, seeing me? I don't know where we want to go from there. Do you have?
Well, the first time I met Dan was we were at your house, and Chappie was there, and all of a sudden in walks Dan. I'm like,
Well, he didn't walk in, but
well, he wheeled Dan.
Give my cover.
And it
away.
was like,
Not the wheelchair dad.
oh,
It's all fake.
what's going on here? And I mean, I had no idea. And Andrea, just the way, were you there when?
I was not. I heard about it on the phone. I heard a lot about it, all of it on the phone.
Yeah, I want to hear. We'll get to that, but I want to hear what Dad was telling you on the phone. Interesting. Yeah, so I had invited Dan over to hang out. I think we were watching a show, watching The Bachelor or something, and you were there. And yeah, I just introduced him, and this is someone I met at the hospital and taking Chappie to therapy, and he's a friend, and he has 2 little girls and whatever. And yeah, so that was the first time you met him. And then,
Was that a couple months after the accident?
yeah, that would have been like,
Yeah,
so the accidents were in August, and that would have been like mid-January probably, or February.
Yeah, months later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So, and then I remember, so you met him that one time, and then you weren't really there in his presence at all or whatever. But then I remember I went home for Thanksgiving in November. So like the following year, and was talking about Dan. And at that point we were dating and had just started dating. So I had separated from my husband. He went to live in a facility that they could care for him 24/7. And well, first he went with his parents, and then now he's in a home where they care for him 24/7. But yeah, lots of stuff happened in between. But then Dan and I were dating. It was Thanksgiving. I went home, and I remember telling you guys, like, don't worry about it. I'm not going to rush into anything crazy. So that was Thanksgiving as at the end of November. I'm not going to rush into anything. There's like, I'm not that dumb. Like, I've just been through so much trauma and tragedy and whatever, but we're just great friends, and he's a great guy, and he's supporting me and whatever. And, but I'm not going to rush into anything. And then December 6th. So it was like a
month
week
later.
a week later.
That's true.
Yeah,
Dad got a phone call.
it's
Remember that phone call?
yeah, yeah. You said that the bishop was coming over to marry you. It was like
It was almost midnight,
midnight. Yeah, it was
or just after midnight.
in the morning, and but kind of strange. But
What was the phone call? Dan, I wanted you explain your version of the phone call, and then we'll have Dad
my
react.
version of the phone call. Like, I grew up always with the idea that, you know, you'd want the parents' blessing and talk to, like, I'm not just gonna scoot in, and I don't know. I just didn't feel right about going through and getting married without parents knowing or whatever, and having some knowledge of it beforehand. Just didn't feel right at all. And so, like,
so you
after
called
the
with
conversation.
You called with the bishop on the doorstep.
Yeah,
Well, we hadn't called him over yet.
yeah, we hadn't called the bishop quite yet.
Yeah, at that point we were still thinking about it. We were ramping up for this idea, and then yeah, it's like, look, I know, you know, there's not much warning here, and you don't know me much, and whatever, and like, just want you to, and I kind of was just trying to explain to you, like, I really care about your daughter, and but out of respect, I wanted to, like, call you and talk to you and, like, get your
Blessing.
blessing, or at least not, yeah, or at least have you be aware of what's happening. And I remember you sat there silently and let me talk through and say everything I was not prepared to say. Like, just this was all just like coming together real crazy fast. And
Well, we had gone a few days before that and gotten a marriage license, and we're like, let's just try this on for size and see how it feels to carry this around, and make it feel more real if this is actually something we want to do. So we already had our marriage license ready to go, but
Well, I assumed that since the bishop was on the front doorstep.
right.
But I also remember in June, the end of June, at the air show.
Oh yeah.
Because our family always goes to the air show, and all my siblings are there, and all my kids are there, or at least part of the kids are there, and Andrea's there, and all of a sudden here comes wheeling up Dan in the wheelchair, and I was like,
Pulling a
With-
wagon
with
attached
the-
to
Pulling a
his
wagon
wheelchair
with-
with the girls in.
Yeah.
with his
with the
girls in
girl.
it, and I'm like, what in the crap is going on here?
Yeah.
Because at this point you're still married, and here comes Dan wheeling up with his two girls, and it was just really ticked me off.
I remember him being very angry.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't right.
Yeah. It was a difficult situation because I was technically still married, but my husband was not there anymore.
Right.
He was gone for all intents and purposes. He was physically there, but he was gone. So yeah, it was a really, really interesting situation to try to navigate. But yeah, for sure, for anyone from the outside looking in, it was like, okay, you're still married. What are you doing?
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate to interject here, but I'm feeling very protective. Sorry, of you, because I don't want anyone to judge you that you just ditched this guy that had been in an accident, because that wasn't the case. There was a lot of, from our perspective as parents, I mean, you look on from the outside and you think everything looks good. But because you and your dad are so close, we knew that there was a lot of underlying issues prior to the accident. And so I don't want anyone to think or believe that you just ditched this guy
Yeah.
when he was in a hard time, because that was not the case.
No.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very true. We were having a lot of difficult times, and he was very emotionally abusive and had a lot of addictions that we were dealing with, and there was a lot. And then I took care of him for a long time, several months, every day, taking care of his daily needs and just becoming his full-time caregiver. And then I actually received his stuff back from work when it became apparent that he wasn't going to go back to work. And there were a lot of things in that box of his belongings that told me that there were a lot more things even going on than
That
I
you knew.
knew about. And it just really, it gave me like, it went from like fighting for this man that loved me and that cared about me and that I needed to fight for, to like, I really lost the ability, like completely lost the ability to be able to like be that strong for him when I realized that he was betraying me before the accident.
before.
And it was, there are a lot of ins and outs to it. And I've talked about it a few times on our social media platforms. And I'm always met with mixed things, with people judging me, saying that I left him, and then people that completely understand it because they've been in similar situations.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks.
Yeah, but looking at it from our perspective and from most people's perspective, I think that most people would feel a lot of the same feelings that we did. Like, what the heck are you doing? It's beautiful, educated.
You could have
Girl.
anyone you wanted.
Yeah, have anyone you want, and your husband has just been in this horrible accident, and then you go attach yourself to someone who's in the same type of a situation. You could, and it was insane, and we don't feel that way now.
But at the
Well,
time,
no,
we
that's
were very
that's the
protective.
nitty gritty of what we're talking
Yeah.
about today. So I want to know, like, why were you feeling that way? To me, it was like completely different, because while Dan was disabled, he had a brain still, and he had a personality, and he had the ability to love and to function and to communicate with me and to parent with me and to talk about the hard things. And my ex had lost all of those capacities. He was just like a young child that couldn't I couldn't talk to him about parenting things. I couldn't talk to him when I was having a hard day. In fact, I remember one night I was like puking my guts out in the toilet, and he came walking down the hall and just like looked at me and then just walked past as if he didn't see anything, and he had no ability to have empathy or to care for me or do anything like that. So I remember actually saying to several people during that time, like, I would marry Dan if he only had his head. Like, if that was the only thing he had, if his rest of his body was amputated and he just had his head, but he could communicate with me and function on an intellectual level with me, then that's like all I cared about. Like, it was refreshing.
But we didn't know Dan. You know, we'd seen him a couple of times, you know, and didn't really want to see him those 2 times that we did see him because it was just a shock and a surprise. We didn't know he was coming to the air show. Didn't know he was coming over to the house. And, you know, as a parent, you want your kids to have a good life, you know. You want them to have a house, and you got 2 kids, you know, you need to support and take care of. And it was like, you're in a wheelchair. You can't do that, you know. But you did, and you have, and it's worked out.
Financially, physically, like, what are some of the things that you were just like what were you thinking? And also, I have MS, so I'm sure that played into it, where you're like, okay, is she gonna have to do everything for him, be his caregiver? Like, what I'll go into more detail about what types of things you were concerned about as far as him maybe not being able to whatever as a husband and dad.
Well, I think that's a big thing, just, you know, being able to financially support you and take care of you and the kids.
How is that going to happen?
Yeah.
You just worry about, like, how is this going to happen, that, you know, because I'm just not used to people being in a wheelchair. You know?
Yeah.
It's just
it's the perception that, like, someone using a wheelchair needs everything done for them. They're not the one that's doing things for the other person.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys as parents were like, well, how are you going to, like, you're going to be taking care of this guy, and you don't need that. And
like a burden instead of.
Yeah, for real.
For me, I think it was more of a concern and protection for you because you had been through such a big trauma, and you had 2 little boys. It was like, just give life a minute. Like, this is happening so fast. Like, we just wanted you to be just heal maybe a little bit before you moved forward. And I mean, how long has it been? I'm not sure how many years we've all been together now.
Oh, we've been married 10 years as of December.
So I think even in these 10 years, like, there's been things that I never in a million years even thought about as far as wheelchairs went, and the challenges that you have to overcome, like going to California and going on the sand to the beach. So, we had that one beach, we had to go clear across sand. And I was like, how is Dan going to do this? You just don't think about those things. And I think we were concerned that with your health, you'd be able to support the family, because we didn't know what Dan was capable of at all.
Yeah. I imagine that was really unnerving.
I didn't have like a big job or anything to be touting around either.
Yeah.
Just cashed out some of my law enforcement retirement.
Yeah.
Paying bills and trying to get life figured out direction-wise and everything still too.
And doing
there was a lot going on.
Yeah. You were doing construction. It was like, how is he going to do that? Like, how is he even going to support?
Yeah.
I remember
that's why
the rest of that phone call that I was talking to Dad on. Like, after I finished, like, my part, like, talking, and then Dad started back in on, like, his first stuff was, because, like, I was like pushing the out of respect, and he's like, first off, you don't know what respect is. And then I was like, oh, here it comes.
You were mad.
Yeah, it's like, first off, you don't know what respect is, because otherwise it wouldn't be. And then I blacked out for a while.
You're like, wait a minute.
So do you remember anything that you said?
No, I don't remember.
You don't? Oh,
I don't
you were
remember
mad.
anything.
It's definitely
You were
frustrating.
loud. It wasn't on speakerphone, and I could hear everything you were saying. And yeah, it was, if you were respectful, you wouldn't have, you would have. It was like, I'm sure you mentioned like starting to see me while I was still married and like whatever.
Visiting at the
And,
house. And
and
yeah.
you
Well, I think it was
calling me at midnight, telling me 2 minutes before that you're going to marry my daughter. Like you were just upset.
Yeah, well, I think it was
Yeah.
all I felt like it, and I think you did too. That it was just all being hidden.
Yeah.
It was secretive.
It was all secretive,
And it was
and
for a
just
reason.
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, boom, you're getting married. You know, and it's just a shock.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't just me you're worried about. You're worried about the grandkids
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
The boys. Yeah.
what everyone's fate is going to be
Yeah,
for sure.
a lot.
Yeah, and it was being hidden from everybody because I knew for sure 100% that people were going to be judging. But it was crazy because on the level of Dan and I, like we felt like everything was being guided by God. Like we felt like our meeting was being guided by God, our becoming friends. We were both at rock bottom. Like Dan had just lost everything that he
Yeah.
knew. His divorce was just final. He had just lost his ability to use his legs, which was his, like everything he did work wise had to do with being physical. And I had just lost my spouse and my family as I knew it and my dreams of the future. And my stepdaughter at the time she got married 4 days after the accident. And so I had plans to be a grandma with Chappie and like we had our whole future like actually envisioned, and I just had lost it all. And when we met each other, it's like we were talking about on the way up here, like you can't have empathy for a situation unless you've gone through it. And because we both had just lost everything, like we had just such this deep connection and empathy towards each other and ability to just like know what each other was going through. And we felt like it was the right time, but we knew that no one else would understand what
Even
we felt on a personal level. So we just didn't tell
Yeah.
people.
Even at that, like there was a lot of question and doubt and fears and things going on between us still. Like we would call things off for a while.
Yeah.
Like be like, all right, you're just going to figure out your life. I'm going to go figure out my life. And then like
Yeah.
we'd end up.
And actually, maybe that's not even
Talking
something
again.
you guys knew, that like you met him that day at my house. And then after that, we completely disconnected and stopped all contact from each other because I told Dan, like, I have to know that the decision that I'm making is based on what the spirit is telling me to do, what I know I need to do. And I need you not to be a part of that decision. I need to not have you, like my affection towards you and the new feelings of a new relationship and whatever, be a part of why I'm disconnecting from this situation that I'm in right now. And so it was really hard because we were a big support system to each other as friends at that time, but we completely cut off all contact for, I don't know, it wasn't a ton of time, but probably like a month and a half.
Yeah, it was a while.
And during that time is when I made the decision to separate from Jeff, to have him be taken care of by his parents, to move out on my own to an apartment, and to see how that felt with my kids. And I did all of that on my own. Dan wasn't there to help
that's
me
when-
move. He wasn't there
That's when
to,
I found out about it was when
Yeah.
you were moving into your,
he was,
talking about an apartment.
he was watching me on social media and he was dying because he wanted to be there helping and supporting and you know, he was seeing what I was going through, but he was not a part of that decision making process. It was very important to me that he wasn't. So I don't know if you guys even know that.
No.
No, I don't think. I mean, and I think that's part of the thing that bugged us and bugged other people in the family too, is that nobody knew.
Yeah.
Anything.
You know, all this stuff was
Yeah.
just kind of on the down low, and it's your life, and you can do what you want, but it affects everyone else
Yeah.
in the family too, and everybody loves you, and everybody wants to be a part of you, and make sure you don't make dumb choices and stuff, and I think everybody probably at the time thought it was a dumb choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
For
think
sure.
knowing that you were battling and that you were doing that on your own brings a level of respect to what you were going through that we didn't know.
Thanks.
Yeah. And
Yeah. We definitely didn't want that decision to be hindered by our trivial affection for each
Yeah.
other or whatever. So.
Yeah, and if you'd have told people, everybody would have tried to talk you out of it because that's just how we are.
Yeah. And we were also meeting individually and together once we started actually dating. Like we were meeting with our bishop, the head of our church congregations, and, you know, like really taking it to the Lord to make sure that we felt individually and together that we were doing the right thing. That doesn't mean it wasn't hard. In fact, because we jumped into it so fast after our tragedies, like when the dust settled and when real life kicked back in, like all of a sudden I was dealing with all the trauma of
Right.
what I had gone through that I hadn't dealt with yet. And he was dealing with all the trauma and loss and grieving the loss of his life before. And like individually, we were dealing with so much. And then it caused contention in our relationship and then trying to blend families. And yeah, it was really, really rough for 7.5 years.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Yeah, I will
it's a
definitely
lot of-
say that you guys are at a whole different level and plane than you. We watched your struggle. We saw the hurt and the pain that you had to go through and sometimes still go through when you see bullet bikes.
Yeah, on the way here,
The green one
of
that
course,
goes by.
a green bullet
I
bike
saw
passed,
that.
and I turned to Jodi, and it's like I hate that. Like my body has a physical reaction. Like I turned to her and I was like, my chest feels hot, my heart is racing, I have like a lump in my throat, and I'm like, it's everything I can do not to just burst into tears. But like this far out from the accident, I have the ability to like take a deep breath and switch my thought process. But I mean, until like 2 years ago, I would just burst into tears if I saw
Yeah.
a bullet bike, let alone like one that looks exactly like the one that he crashed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
You've
yeah,
come a
but-
long way.
and Dan has been so, I just want to say, like, to be able to sit there and listen to me grieve my ex-husband while we're married. Like I have cried so many times to him about how hard it was to lose him and how much I loved him and how whatever. And Dan has just held me through it all. And even as recent as a few months ago, we had a cry fest where I was just completely distraught and grieving like the loss of my son's dad. And at one point I apologized to Dan. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like I hate telling you how much I loved him and how much I lost when I lost him. And Dan was like, I'm here for you. Like, that's the reason I'm here, is to comfort you through all of your emotions and whatever. And he's been such a rock star in that way. Like, I think it would be hard to do that. I don't know if I could handle it if you were telling me you were grieving your ex-wife, honestly.
So I don't need to tell you.
Yeah.
I leave that out. Just kidding.
Yeah, what a gift that you have had each other over these 10 years, and you've really grown together, and it's beautiful to watch. And we're grateful and we love Dan.
Thanks. Yeah. So I want to kind of transition the conversation into, once we did get married, once you didn't have a choice in it, once you couldn't convince me otherwise because it already happened. Dan and I used to laugh because there were a lot of times, Dad, when you would come visit, and it's like you just seemed so awkward. Like, oh, like I want to help, but I don't know what to do to help, and I don't want to offend him by stepping in. And I know he's like, the more you visited, the more you realized he was capable of things that you thought he wasn't. But it's like, it was just always, I feel like it's gotten a lot better the last couple of years, but for a lot of years, it was like really awkward for you. I felt like when you would come around, because you were just like, where's my place? What do I do? And then the last, when was it? I guess 2 years ago, when you ejected Dan out of his wheelchair.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I proved my point.
You said yesterday, I learned not to touch Dan's wheelchair after that.
Yeah, we were at a high school graduation yesterday, and there was a steep hill to go up, and Dan was down there trying to get up, and Jodi's like,
Going down.
Going down,
Yeah.
down a steep hill.
no, but
First
coming
foot going
up.
up, they were up there.
I went down there to help, and Jody's like, "Why don't you go down there and help him?" I look. The last time I helped him, he went out of the wheelchair head first, and so I don't help anymore because he knows what to do, and I don't.
So we were coming in. It was during the winter, right? For
Yeah,
Christmas
it's like
or something.
Christmas or
But
something.
Dan was coming into like the door threshold of my dad's house, like over a little step. And what he usually does is grabs onto like the edge of the door frame and just kind of pulls himself in. Well, Dad thought he would help. And so he kind of gave him a push, but it like pushed his wheelchair forward, and Dan just went like flying down to the floor in the entryway of Dad's house.
Yeah, he dumped me out on the floor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Found
Got
the
your
eject
back.
button.
got your back.
So
Like,
what was that like for you, like all those years as you were kind of trying to get a feel for what Dan was capable of or whatever?
Well, it's still that way. Dan likes to do things himself, and that's great. Do everything you can. But and I'm one that likes to help people, but he has his own way to do things, and I have my own way to do things too. And if somebody tries to tell me how to do things, it's not right. But Dan likes to do things his way, and he's very capable and knows how to do tons of things. But it's just kind of hard to not help people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's funny because, and I'll let you speak to this, Dan, but it's funny because on the flip side of that, because you're there, Dan wants to like prove to you
Yeah,
that he's taking care of your daughter and your grandkids.
yeah,
He wants to like go above and beyond to show you that he can do it on his own and that he doesn't need your help, because he wants you to know that he's there for us and that he's capable. And he doesn't want you to worry when you leave that I'm doing everything. So it's like he wants to like extra show you that he's doing
yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah, like mentally, it's not like a conversation that we have or anything. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to show him.
Yeah.
But no, there's definitely like a sense of like self-assurance or whatever it is to be like, that like I can still, do things or whatever. And
Well,
think-
you've proven you
I think
can now, so let me do a few things.
yeah, I
Mike.
think I've gotten to, I think I'm to the point where I'm like not feeling like somebody's just trying to help just to like whatever make
Help because you're in a
yeah.
wheelchair. Yeah.
Well,
So
two
like
years-
I don't have
2 years ago when we came up before we left to go, then you've been talking about getting rid of that above ground swimming pool for years,
yeah.
and the hot tub that no longer worked, and it never happened. So I finally just said, let me do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did it, and if we hadn't have done it, it would probably still be there.
Probably, yeah.
Might still be there in 10 years because a giant thing like that, I mean, you could have done it, but it was much easier for me and the boys to do it.
Yeah. So
And-
Dan, can you talk about what your perspective was like when they were thinking at the beginning that you weren't going to be able to care for me? Like you're not naive or dumb to that thought process. You knew that that's what they were thinking. So how was that for you? Like knowing that your future in-laws were thinking that you were completely incapable to care for their daughter.
Like I think just a part of my like normal thinking anyways, like I know that people just, I mean, everybody would have a kind of a wonder, like what is he able to do or what's going to happen. And so like for me, it was just like, just trying to show what our normal day is without people jumping in to help out, just like seeing that, we did everything and survived, and that I could take care of not just Andrea, but the kids, and, like keep up with the things that we needed to, I felt like, and, just trying to juggle everything and provide and like have our house and have like all the things that a normal couple deal with and struggle with or put together, and just trying to like knowing that like everybody, like I would too, like in the back of my mind be wondering, okay, well, can he do this or that, or like, do I need to do this, or I don't know. Like there definitely should be thought into that it's just natural. So I think a lot of it, I would just do things and not really think about it, just knowing that, like, I guess my biggest fault is I don't like step back and be like, okay, like you're here, like help out if you want, which like now mentally, like I'm fine with, and not feeling like I just need to do everything on my own just to show that, dang it, I can do it all. So
Yeah, you definitely had something to prove. You felt like,
not just to prove to like anybody else, but like even for myself, like I know it was a big deal when we, like the biggest thing when you were pregnant with Maisie, and 6 months or 5 months prior to when she was going to be born, we decided we were going to remodel the house, like tearing walls out, like real walls out. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. Like, because I built homes and stuff for years. And as soon as she's like, all right, well, let's do it then. I was like, oh, wait, how am I going to build a wall? Like, how am I going to run around with my nail gun and hammer? And like, so like, it was that was like the biggest mental undertaking, and it was hard for me. Like I didn't tell Andrea any of it. Like I was like scared to death after I was like, yeah, we can do that. And then I'm like getting a sledgehammer and breaking holes through the walls.
yeah, all of a sudden you're like, you punched your hand through the wall, and then the kids got the hammers and started banging it down.
fun.
And then at that point you had to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. And Andrea's always been really good at just like encouraging to just do whatever, like whatever challenges or whatever things are there. She's just always like step back and
I guess
encouraging.
it's a good partnership, because I don't know that you're doubting yourself. And so you're like showing confidence. And so then I'm like, I have confidence too.
Yeah, we're both on.
You can do it. But
So,
yeah, I think one of the biggest positives of our social media is that it is like putting to rest some of these stereotypes, not just for the relatives and friends of people, but for people that have a disability. And like, for instance, we've had several people reach out to us that are wheelchair users that are like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know that I could be a dad,
do
or
this,
that I could have a
yeah.
family, or that I could like still do some of the projects that I love, or work on cars. Or it's like, just like you guys were doubting his capabilities, like people that are using wheelchairs are also doubting their own capabilities and thinking the same thing. Dan was never in a wheelchair before. Just like you said, you hadn't been around people that use wheelchairs. Neither had he.
the
All
first
of a
thing,
sudden he's a wheelchair user, and he's thinking the same thing you guys are. I'm not going to be able to do anything.
I remember I came down to do that Tough Mudder, and we went down to
Oh, yeah.
Arizona, and
Arizona.
Oh yeah.
it's like, okay, this is going to be interesting. Like I agreed to do this Tough Mudder thing and go do all these obstacles and go take on the whole world there. And it was, I remember you were still nervous how I was going to get into the house with like a little threshold lip on the door.
Yeah.
We still
we
think
arrived-
about that all the time.
We arrived
just
to Arizona. Was it?
Married a couple of months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Like,
was in March, I think.
Yeah, and we arrived there, and everyone was like, "Oh, how's Dan gonna get into the house? There's like a little lip." And I'm like, "We literally drove here to do a Tough Mudder. You guys don't think you can get into
Get
the
over the
house?
lip.
Okay."
yeah, so I remember
see what
even
you
at the
can
Tough
do.
Mudder, like going through, I didn't want to miss any of the events. Like that was really pressing me mentally. And then one of them was this high dive thing where you're supposed to jump out and try to grab this swinging bar and like swing out into the water. Well, I already didn't do heights. I already didn't do water. I already didn't. Yeah. Anyways,
Which again, I didn't know about.
Andrea found me at the backside of this thing, like wondering how the heck I was going to get up there and everything. And anyways, like really doubting, but I was like, man, I don't want to like leave just one obstacle out of this thing. Like I want to do it all. And she's like, well, just do it. I'm like, okay. Like, I guess it's done. Now I'll go do it. I remember
Yeah.
getting up
And I
there.
don't think I knew that you were scared of heights or water. So I was
Oh,
like,
man.
I can do it.
It's like 50,000 feet up in the air from the water.
Yeah,
At least it
was
felt like
pretty
that
high.
too when I looked and hit the water. But
Yeah, I'm curious because we know your side a little bit, but how were you feeling about providing for the family when you were about to take on a whole new set of kids and life?
yeah, it was definitely definitely a mental struggle. Like, I was very aware that like I was still the man and wanted to like I knew I was going to be providing and putting stuff together for our family, and like I knew that was stuff that I was going to have to be prepared to do. And so like I think I was trying to figure out like what I was going to do job wise to provide that was going to make anywhere near the money that I used to make. And so there was a lot that was upstairs happening with that. And I think as I was watching my retirement funds like disappear, paying for everything and my mortgage and car payments and things, and like I dedicated the whole first year of being out of the hospital to just physical therapy. And man, it was like 5 days a week doing that. And so like I hadn't really locked in on what I was going to do job wise, I don't think. And
Didn't you still have
And-
a house as well?
yeah, I had all the things that we paid money on, and yeah, still at the house up in North Ogden, and yeah, I was still making all that happen. And then I was working with workforce or voc rehab to figure out what I was going to do, and like testing everything out, like job wise. And
Yeah.
they have all the tests to take to try to help, because I was like really hung up. I was still stuck in like I hadn't really even grieved or whatever, figured out like my new life, my new standards on what I could do. It was a hard thing trying to figure that out. And then like I was just very aware that I needed to. And then, you know, I was like working on insurances and disability income, and like right from the get-go trying to set all these things up, and then making sure that I did have a job figured out and something. And, you know, so I did end up pulling it together. I think I was working for the gym. It was the first job I took, right?
Were there people at the hospital that were supporting you and helping you find all those resources, or did you have to do it all?
No,
on your
and
own?
I keep talking about I want to be there in some way to figure something out for people. I don't know if they do that now, but when I was doing it, like nobody said anything, and I just had a really good friend, Bridget, that she did an amazing job. She was up there helping me fill out Medicaid paperwork, and
She was a
she was a-
nurse.
she was a
She
nurse.
knew the back end of what people have to do
yeah,
with
so she was up there with
insurance-wise
the
and
Social
stuff.
Security stuff and put all the medical jargon in that you needed to
Wow.
not get denied the first time like everybody else does. But so it was like, you know, a lot of stuff right from the get-go that was just like, all right, got to hit the ground running, because I knew I had a divorce already in place. Like it was going to finalize, and it finalized several weeks into being at the hospital. And so it was nerve-wracking thinking that, man, like I'm going to come out of the hospital single dad, and am I going to be like dating? Like what are the girls, like how's that going to go? And I had been dating like a couple of people as my ex-wife had moved out, and like we were just like the whole world changed when I was in the hospital, and mentally just trying to figure out what the heck to do. It was overwhelming. I didn't really have a job plan figured out.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that none of it made sense.
Yeah.
None of it made
Lots.
sense.
100%.
Just like it didn't make sense to you guys, none of it made sense to us either.
But it was always weird, like, as Andrea's just referring to, like, having our, like, where the faith was in what we were doing.
Yeah.
'Cause I had been away from the church, including my spirituality and everything, and focus of that for like 17 or 18 years prior to about 3 months before my injury, when I started meeting with our bishop and trying to, like, where I realized that I was like the example, like I was who my daughters were looking at as a man that they were going to, like, hold all other men against
Yeah.
growing up. And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, like, I'm screwing up. Like, if I ever saw a dude like me in their lives, oh man, be getting rid of that dude. So anyways, I was like, I need to change. And like, I started really focusing on that, and spiritually, like, you know, I was reading my scriptures and praying and, like, putting so much focus on my faith and spirituality. And I think as things kept happening and we kept on having, like, funds for things, and things would work out, and, like, stuff that just didn't make sense would happen. And it's just like that all, like, from the get-go. Even now, there's still just
Yeah, I was gonna
like
say
cause and
today.
action, and it's so crazy to just feel like,
I think we were both in that space too. Like you were in a really good space spiritually because you had just started that venture, and then were relying a lot on God to get through your stuff.
yeah.
And I was most definitely relying a ton on God to get me through
Yeah.
every second of every day when I was going through what I was going through. So we were both, like, in a really good place spiritually, on a personal level. So
To accept those blessings and to see them for
Yeah.
what they were.
yeah, and I think that's important. Like, we've talked a lot this week about, like, a parent's role in their adult children's lives and how it's so hard to step back and just let them do what they think is best when you think you know better. And I think there's a scripture that I wanted to talk about today. It's Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. And I think that's a scripture that goes 1,000,000% with our situation on so many levels. But, like, if we had leaned on our own understanding, or on the understanding of our parents or our siblings or our friends or anyone from the outside looking in, we would have never been together. We would have never gotten married. We would have never had the beauty that's come from these 10 years of struggle and of learning together and growing and building our family and growing our family. And, like, it's so important to, even when it doesn't make sense to you, like, to rely on God and to pray about things and to feel the confirmation of the Spirit, and then to not care what other people think when you're feeling that, you know?
But then to have all of that happen and all of that go into place, and then be in a position where we are now, and be able to, like, influence or help encourage, like, millions of
Yeah.
people that hear things or get motivation or hope, or want to, like, step up and do a little bit better on one thing or another from seeing something in our social media. It's seriously, things have just been so guided, it feels like.
Yeah.
Again,
It's very apparent in hindsight that we needed to come together for a bigger purpose.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the time it was hard.
Well, a good example of your desire to help people is when we dropped Maisie off at school yesterday. And we took her to school, and we pulled up, and we both seen this little girl that she's probably in 6th grade, just sitting there on the lawn with her backpack, and she looked like she was, you know, really sad. And so we took Maisie walked her over to kindergarten, and then came back, and I went and got in the van, and Andrea went over and talked to her. You know, that's the kind of people that you are always wanting to help somebody. And I don't know what she said. That she said she was just waiting for somebody
Yeah,
or something.
she said
but
she was waiting for her friend.
she looked really sad, and most people wouldn't do anything about it. You just let them go. And you were caring and went over there, just like with the kids at the graduation party the other night that were
Yeah.
acting
That
like
we're riding
fools in
around on the
parking lot.
the roof of the car. Yeah.
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 Just always want
I
to
just
help.
think because I'm a mom, because I know that, man, if my kid, when I saw that little girl, I pictured one of our daughters that struggles. And I thought, if that was our daughter, like I would hope like crazy that a mom would go and approach her and reach out to her at school, or the kids that were being super dangerous in the parking lot. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can totally picture at least one of my kids getting in that situation.
Yeah.
And I would hope so bad that somebody would take the time to stop and teach them a lesson and tell them to stop. But yeah, I think when you go through hard things, like you learn so much, and you learn to not care what people think and just care about the individual person, and
Yeah.
making sure that people are okay, because you've been in a spot where you're not okay a lot of times.
Yeah.
So
Well, to me, helping other people is what life is all about. And the
Yeah.
more you can help people, and it makes you feel so good when you help somebody.
yeah.
You guys do that a lot. That's what your life is.
Bring a
helping
lot of
people.
Well, I learned that from you, Dad, and I
Good.
should give a better introduction to you as my dad. I forgot I was going to do that, but my parents got divorced when I was 10, and I had 4 siblings, and my dad raised the 4 of us on his own as a single dad. He was in the Air Force. We moved to Japan. We moved to Germany, and he raised us. He came to every function. He came to, like, he was always there to support and love and comfort, and never missed an event, and took us to church every Sunday, even when things were really hard and there. And like, just, and on top of that, was always helping people. Like, his strong point was like in computers, and I swear, like, at least once a week you were spending hours at somebody's house fixing their computer, because especially at that time, like, nobody knew anything about computers, and Dad was an expert. So he just was always helping people, even though he was a single dad of 4 with all of his burdens. So I definitely learned that from you, for sure.
Well, I can see that, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words, because it makes me feel good when I see stuff like that.
Yeah. And then Jodi, I'll give a better introduction to you.
No.
She joined the family when, how old would I have been? How long have you guys been married?
26 and a half years.
22 years.
22
Oh, 22
years.
years.
So I was like 20, I can't do math.
You were in the
21.
20s, yeah.
21.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was an adult. I was married. I didn't have any kids yet, but Jodi joined our family, and my dad's a little rough around the edges, and she has been the just beautiful glue that has held our family together all these years. She's been the Mima that my kids wouldn't have if she wasn't around. She's the grandma that comes around and does all the crafts and all the arts. And in fact, yesterday, Marley, Jodi had bought a couple little painting sets for the girls, and you guys went to the store yesterday morning, but Marley saw them on the table when she woke up in the morning, and she came into me, and she was like so excited and bouncing, and I'm going to give this to Maisie, and when can we paint? And then she stopped and she goes, Mima gave this to us because she loves us. And she was so sincere, and she just knows without a doubt that you love them. And I appreciate that so much. Like,
Yeah.
the community and the support that children get from having a good grandma. I had a incredible grandma
Yeah, you did.
that meant the world to me and taught me how to be a good woman too. And so to see my kids interacting and having that in their life, like, not to mention all the stuff you've done for me and the support you've been to me too. But yeah, I'm so blessed to have incredible parents and to have them support us and to be there and loving and helping us and our family and our kids. So yeah, thank you guys.
It's been beautiful to be a part of your story and to watch you grow and grow together. We just adore all of you. You're awesome.
Thank you so much for being here and being part of this incredible conversation and getting to know our family a little bit better. we would really appreciate it if you subscribe to our channel. And then if you liked this conversation and listening to this, then please click on the video here and watch that as well. And yeah.
Yep. Stay tuned for weekly podcasts coming out. It's going to be
Exciting.
very exciting.